everybody and welcome. It's me, Shimigami X. What I have for you today is not a Bleach review. Yes, it is again another Bleach discussion. Before we get into this first, I know you haven't seen a video from me in a little while. I've been doing my Bleach reviews and whatnot, but that's because I've been all busy, you know, with exams and whatnot. As you can see, I'm in a captain's theory. So as you know, I've been taking my captain's exams and I've passed. So yes, Shimigami X has now been promoted to Captain X. Alright, so long time no see, guys. So what I want to be talking to you about today is I got another discussion, and the question was posed to me whether I think Ichigo is stronger than the captains of the Gote 13. Alright, let's get into this straight away, guys. Alright, now let's start with the beginning. When we first see Ichigo face off against any of the captains of the Gote 13. We're going to start off with against Zaraki Kenpachi. We've all seen that battle. To begin with, Ichigo couldn't cut Zaraki, he couldn't touch him. Couldn't put any graze on him at all until he amped up his spiritual pressure and Zangetsu helped him out. And then we all know that Ichigo consequently won that battle. The reasons I believe he won that battle was simply because he's the main protagonist. As we know, with a lot of Shonen Jump animes, that the main protagonist always ends up being victorious. It's just standard, that's just how it goes. And if you don't like it, you don't like it. It's your problem. Alright, now we see him face against Byakuya Kuchiki later on in the Soul Society arc. He faced against Byakuya Kuchiki and has quite a hard time. And he was, in fact, about to still lose, even though he attained his Bankai. The only reason that he got saved was because of his Hollow. His Hollow, you know, took over and dealt some significant damage to Byakuya. Weakening Byakuya, bringing them on terms where they're able to clash for one final time. Ichigo ends up being victorious. Even though he was in a similar state to Byakuya, where, you know, he couldn't fight anymore. The only difference is that Byakuya's sword broke. Now, let's go back to the fight against Zaraki Kenpachi. Ichigo fell to the floor first. And then Kenpachi was like, no, you idiot, you won. So I don't understand how people would say that, oh, Ichigo beat Zaraki Kenpachi just because Zaraki Kenpachi said that, oh, you know, he won. When they were both in the very much the same state. Ichigo was left blooded on the floor. And if nobody came to his aid, you know, like Yoruichi, he would have died. Just like how if Zaraki's lieutenant never came to Zaraki's, you know, aid, he would have died as well. Alright. So, when you bear that in mind, how can you say that Ichigo is stronger than Zaraki Kenpachi? When, let's move further into the series now, against, you know I'm going with this, against Noitara. Now, even though Ichigo, yes, you could argue Ichigo was beat up and whatnot, that he just fought Grimmjow and the Noitara jumped him, but that's a battle. Battles go like that, battles aren't fair. Where I'm going with this is, you see that Noitara is quite frankly kicking the shit out of Ichigo. Sorry, excuse my French, but that's what he's doing, he's kicking the shit out of him. So, Zaraki Kenpachi joins the fray, and, you know, takes him down. Takes him down, uses Kendo, takes him down. After a lengthy and drawn out battle, of course, but yeah, he takes him down. I think you need to realize as well, in terms of Zaraki Kenpachi, that we've yet to see Zaraki Kenpachi's true power. For those of you who read the manga, and I'm going to call spoiler alert now, so for those of you who are up to date with the manga, I advise you stop watching now. Alright, now I've said that, moving on. When we look in terms of the manga, we've seen that, you know, Zaraki Kenpachi has also been, you know, limiting like the amount of power he can use, and he's put these mental shackles on himself, as you know we've seen by the chapter of him and Unohana fighting. Alright. On top of that, he has the eye patch, which significantly reduces his Reiatsu. Alright now, when you bear that in mind, he took off the eye patch against the Noitara, fair enough, and he took it off against Ichigo, fair enough. But he still wasn't at the strength that he was meant to be at. Because he didn't even know his Shikai. Ichigo used his Shikai to the limit at that point. At a period in time, he didn't know his Bankai. So, he was at his limit. Okay, you can argue that Zaraki Kenpachi was at his limit, but he technically wasn't, because he put the shackles on himself. If he was broken free from the shackles, Ichigo would have quite bluntly died in that battle. And I know a lot of people say that, oh yeah, Ichigo has to be stronger than the captains of the Gote 13 because look what he did to Aizen. Alright. Dangai Ichigo and Aizen. That battle. Before we get into that, let's bear something in mind here. when you have a Spada Zero, Yami, in my opinion, he's whack. Not a Spada Zero, but let's move on. Alright, when we have a Spada Zero now, Ichigo just come back from against his fight against Ulquiorra, fully healed because of his hollow powers. And you know, Orihime, no, did Orihime heal him? I don't believe so, but he was fully restored because of his hollow powers. Then, he's fighting against Yami, you know, when he's standing. He lures Yami far away from his friends, so we know he's not holding back now. He pulls out his hollow mask with the new pattern, so you know that he's had a power increase now against when he's fighting Ulquiorra. He used to get to potential at more or less point blank range in Yami's face / neck. Did minimal damage to him. Yami got up within seconds. Then, Yami grabs him, starts beating him up, throwing him around. Now, we see Zaraki Kenpachi join the fray. And then Yami is about to crush him. What does Kenpachi do? Slashes him, breaks off part of his mask, flips him over, sends him to the ground. Now you need to bear this in mind. Ichigo did this in his Bankai. Hollowified, full power Getsuga Tensho. Zaraki Kenpachi now, that hasn't even awoken his Shikai at this point, and has toppled over Yami in the form that was pummeling Ichigo. Then, you have to look at things like this as well. When you're talking about powers, like who's stronger in terms of Bleach, you need to bear in mind the abilities. So far, I know I had my own Ichigo powers theory video, but you need to bear in mind that, you know, Ichigo, in his battles, he predominantly uses his Bankai and his holification that we've seen so far. So he normally fights at what we see him to be, at that period in time, his maximum power. At that period in time. I'm not saying that he's not going to get stronger, because you all know that he is. But at that period in time, for that moment, he's fighting at maximum power. Zaraki Kenpachi doesn't even know the name of his Shikai. So therefore, how can he ever be fighting at maximum power when he's yet to learn his own Soul Reaper powers? Alright, now we take for example Byakuya Kuchiki. Byakuya, same scenario, fighting against a Spada Zero, Yami. Topples him over with his Senbon Zakura, Kageyoshi. I believe he was in Bankai in this period in time. He topples him over in a similar fashion to that Kenpachi toppled over Yami. So now, also bearing that in mind now, you need to remember that the amount of trouble that Ichigo had against Grimmjow, against Ulquiorra. Ulquiorra essentially killed Ichigo. The only reason Ichigo's lived is because of his hollow powers. His hollow powers and, you know, the high speed regeneration. It took over, and that's what defeated Ulquiorra. Not Ichigo's conscience himself. Ichigo's hollow defeated Ulquiorra. Now, when you look at it in terms of like, oh, you know, other captains and, you know, the Visors, for example, they defeated the Espada Baragon. I'm sorry, Ichigo's my boy and everything, but he could not tangle Baragon. No way he could tangle Baragon. That Respa, you know, where he ages you, anything he touches, it ages. Ichigo's got no defense against that. Yes, Ichigo's powers are essentially his speed and Getsuga Tensho, because as I've explained before in a previous video, that he's yet to, you know, go into his inner world and, you know, use Jinzen, which his dad taught him, which is why he was able to go to the, you know, final Getsuga Tensho with the chains on his arm, Dangai Ichigo state. Alright. What else? Of all the captains of the Gote 13, when they all fought Aizen, yes, we all saw that they lost miserably. But you need to bear something in mind, that they all fell under Aizen's spell. You know, the spell of Aizen's Kyoka Suigetsu. Then, you look at somebody like when Ichigo was fighting Gin Ichimaru. Gin was essentially toying with Ichigo. Just like how he was toying with Toshiro. But then, if it was any of the other captains, do you think that the result would have been the same? That's a question to you. What else you want to bear in mind? If Ichigo fell under the spell of Kyoka Suigetsu, the battle would have been over. There would be nothing you could do about it. The battle would have been over. Because, are you telling me that you seriously believe that Ichigo is stronger than Kyoraku Shunsui, Shinji, Byakuya, Kenpachi, and all the other captains, exclude Toshiro, because I just think he's whack. So, you honestly think, bearing in mind the powers and how far they've developed their Bankais, some of their Bankais we haven't even seen. Whereas Ichigo is using his Bankais to defeat enemies such as Ginjo. Ginjo, who quite bluntly is nowhere near the power of, you know, anyone he's faced before, such as the Espada and whatnot. He's nowhere near that power. Ichigo took him out with ease in his Bankai, yes, we can all see that. But then if Ichigo was ever have a matchup against someone like Tear Haribel, just that pure volume of water, what can Ichigo do against that? Except avoid. If he was face off against Baragon, what can he do against that power? Very little he could do. If he's faced off against Spider number 1, Stark, what could he do against those wolves that, if they bit you, they can fatally wound a captain level visored? Bear that in mind, not just a captain level visored, because one thing you need to understand that in terms of Bleach is that it's done by in terms of ranking. When you see, turn back the pendulum arc, you see Rose, Love, Shinji, Urahara, they are captains. And underneath them is their lieutenants, who are not as powerful at this period in time. So, therefore, you can argue, forget if Aizen did not have the Hogyoku, would Shinji and that lot be stronger than Aizen? Yes, you can say that, because at that time, Aizen was the lieutenant of Shinji. Okay, you need to bear in mind that the fact that, you know, different abilities, that Aizen's Kyoka Sugetsu power is stronger than Shinji's Shikai. Okay, but we don't know what their Bankais are saying. Alright. So now, where I was going with this was, at this period in time, you see that, for example, Tozen is underneath Kensai. Aizen is underneath Shinji, and vice versa. So, if Ichigo can't tangle with these guys, what makes you think he can tangle with the captain level visors? And then, with this Sparta number 1, Stark, able to use his wolves and injure these captain level visors who have had their powers for over 100 years, so they developed their powers, being able to shoot Zero and whatnot, controlling the hollow powers to probably to the best of their ability. Do you really think Ichigo has the power to tangle with that when he only recently developed his Bankai? When, okay, considering the time skip in the last, what, 3 years? Essentially, the last 2 to 3 years. Do you really think you can compete with that? It's unrealistic to say that. The reason Ichigo will always triumph and become stronger than his enemy is simply because he is the main protagonist. And that's how the story needs to move forward. So, in my opinion, when you bear everything in mind, in my opinion, Ichigo is not stronger than the captains of the Goten 13 for the reasons I have just explained. Feel free to disagree with me. Also, you need to bear this in mind. There's this discussion that they say Ichigo is stronger than Genryusai Yamamoto. Yamamoto Shigekuni Genryusai. Okay. Let's bear this. Let's stack this up. You have Ichigo, Shikai, Bankai, Hollow. Yamamoto, Shikai, Bankai. When Ichigo fought Aizen before he had the Dangai training, he was no match for him. The only reason Aizen beat Yamamoto is because he created Wonder Wise. Wonder Wise, who gave up every single bit of like his intelligence, his speed, everything for the sole power of sealing away Ryujin Jaka. It's stated in like Bleach novels that there are 2 captains that Aizen did not want to fight. One of them was Yamamoto, because he said so himself that Yamamoto's power exceeds his own. His Ryujin Jaka is more powerful than his Kyoka Sugetsu. And when Aizen stabbed him and Genryusai had his arm, the fight was essentially over. If it wasn't for Wonder Wise, Aizen would have been dead. Quite bluntly, he would have been dead. Now, when you look at this now, Ichigo, is he stronger than Yamamoto? Are you serious? Wait, are you guys being serious? Whoever says that, you guys, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. Are you retarded? Bear in mind what I just said about the power situation. Look, Shikai, Genryusai Yamamoto, Blazing Inferno. There's very little you can do about that with Ichigo's powers that he has at the moment. Even with his Fullbring powers and even when he has a new Tensei Zangetsu. There's very little he could do against that power. Then, we've all seen his Bankai. And the only reason his Bankai was ineffective against Juha Bark is because Juha Bark tricked him. Ichigo is not that intelligent to be able to trick Yamamoto in the same way that Aizen has and the same way that Juha Bark has. Because, look at that ability. Ichigo generally relies on physical attacks, minus the use of Getsu Potential. He doesn't know any Kido. So, in his Bankai, if Yamamoto just, flash steps up to him and touches him, Ichigo's over. We've yet to see Aizen's Bankai. He was another captain. Kenpachi Zaraki. Aizen even stated himself that there were 2 captains that he didn't want to battle. One was Kenpachi. 2 was Yamamoto. For those of you who don't know, you should read the Bleach novels. They are posted all over the internet, and they're not written by Kubo, but they are overseen by Kubo. I believe this was the 8th Kenpachi. No, not the 8th Kenpachi. Forget that. It states in that novel that Kubo was overseen and you know, given the thumbs up to, given the go ahead, that Kenpachi's Reiatsu is strong enough to push back Baragan's Respa. Ichigo's power is not strong enough to do that. Even when he went to the final get to Getensho form, which all that was him pushing his Reiatsu to the extreme. Like, to the ultimate extreme, to the extent that where, if he attacks in that form, he loses all the Shinigami powers. So, are you telling me that the other captains of the Gotei 13, given their hundreds and sometimes, in some cases, thousands of years of training, aren't able to do a similar thing? Minus the exception of Toshiro, because he's whack. So yeah, is that what you really believe that? That someone like Kenpachi couldn't push his Reiatsu to the extreme to unleash an ultimate attack where he'd essentially lose his Shinigami powers? I believe that he could. But anyways, guys, that's all I have for this discussion today. This is me, Shinigami X, your new captain, Captain X. I'm signing out, and as always, people, take care and peace.